Here we are in our season as we have been moving from Christmas into the season of Epiphany, the time when we think of the spread of the light of Christ and of people of different generations, different countries, different faiths, coming to recognize the presence of Christ. Epiphany. Not a word that we use a whole lot these days. Isn't it odd that we get these funny words in church that you never hear anywhere else? Well, I think of when I think I was about 7 years old, in Sunday school, in Miss Redgrave's class in Sunday school, and there on the blackboard she had written the word Epiphany. And she looks at all of us 7-year-olds and says, "So, who knows what that means?" And all of us looked at it, and we couldn't even read it, let alone know what it meant. And there are some disadvantages to being the preacher's kid, because somehow they figure all of this wisdom and knowledge and understanding will pass down, and so that the preacher's kid will know the answers to all questions. So Miss Redgrave, a rather large woman, looked at me. Not only was she my Sunday school teacher, she was also my day school teacher as well, which added another little element to the story. And so Miss Redgrave looks at me and says, "Paul, surely you know, what does that word say?" I looked at it and I had no idea what it said. So she put on her teacher voice and she said, "Well, sound it out and then use it for me in a sentence." So I looked at it. Annie, Fanny. And I said to her, "Miss Redgrave, not only do you not have a normal Fanny, you have an Epiphany." That day, I had an epiphany. And the epiphany is, you should not make fun of your teacher, no matter how big her fanny. Well, Epiphany. We're thinking of journeys to Christ. And I think here on this, the first Sunday of the new year, I think it's very important that we look at our spiritual journey and how it may relate to some of the spiritual journeys of others that we've been reading about. And we looked at the journey of the wise men today. Think about spiritual journeys, those who have come from near and those who have come from far. Those who have had a relatively easy time coming to faith, and those for whom the journey to faith has actually been quite arduous, and that the journey to faith has not been easy at all. I think as I read through the accounts in the Gospels, two different groups who had two very different experiences. The first group was the shepherds. Now the shepherds, where were they? They were one field over. Coming to Christ for them was something that was extremely easy. They had an angel come and tell them, "Get up off your fanny and come on over to the next field over." And they told them who they're going to see, where they're going to see them, and even what the child is going to be wearing. And so for the shepherds to be able to make their way one field over and find everything exactly as the angel had said, it was pretty darn easy for them to come to faith. You probably know people like that who, in their spiritual journey, it's been a piece of cake. They grew up in the church. They went to church all their lives. They had parents who perhaps read Bible stories for them at home. They prayed at home. And it was just a natural, easy progression to come to faith, because it was something that was there their whole life's journey. It didn't take a whole lot of effort to come to faith. But then there are the wise men. These blokes are in a whole different country. We don't know a whole lot about them, but what we know is that they were seekers of truth. They didn't have a perfect faith. They didn't know exactly what they were looking for when they were looking for truth. But ultimately, what they were looking for is the one who said, I am the way and the truth and the life. But off in that far distant country, for them to come to faith in Christ, it was a big ordeal. They had to be prepared to cross mountains, to go through the blazing heat of the day and the unbelievable cold of night, and to come to Christ was not just a walk in the park. There may be some of you or some that you know who had a journey that was something like that in order to come to Christ. It was not easy. They did not grow up in the church. They did not grow up with people giving them Bible stories as they were growing up. They knew nothing. And for them to come to faith, it was a long, arduous journey. But when they made it, they found peace. So, the wise men. How did God guide them? First of all, I notice that it is God who takes the initiative. Some of you may be praying for family members, for friends who haven't yet found the light of Christ. Know that it's God who takes the initiative and finds a way to be able to speak to them. For the wise men, what was it that spoke to them? It was something that happened up in the heavens, something that they called a new star that arose, that made absolutely perfect sense to them. And when they saw that new star in the heavens, it was a sign, a symbol to them that they said, wow, pay attention, something unique, something is going on here that is very special. If God wanted to speak to me, I hope he does not use stars. Because I rarely spend a whole lot of time gazing up at stars, and I would not be able to tell you in the least if there was a change from last night to tonight. I would have no idea. And so for God to use stars to speak to me, the whole meaning is going to be entirely lost. It was the perfect way to speak to the wise men, not the perfect way to speak to me. So, what metaphorically is your star? What does God use to get your attention? What is it that you do pay attention to that somehow in the midst of all of that, God can find a way to capture your attention? We need a star like that. Maybe it's the latest book that you're reading, and somehow in that book you just hear a word that says, wow, that's a truth. And that truth is for me. Or it might be a television show. Or it might be just as you're out walking on a winter's day in the peace and calm with no noise around you at all. But you learn to be able to recognize in the midst of all of that, there is a way that God is using to speak to you, to guide you, to bring you forward. Learn how to recognize what that, quote, star is for you. As the wise men were journeying along, I wonder what happened when they came to their first mountain. And they all look at each other and say, well, what do we do here? Do we go around it this way? Or do we go around it this way? How do we get there? We want to be following God's will. How do we get around this mountain? My hunch is that God gave them a whole lot of latitude of choice in what they do when they reach the first mountain. I don't think God had it specifically, clearly delineated to say, well, what I want you to do is set your compass for 270 degrees and go 37 kilometers. And at the end of 37 kilometers, I want you to set your compass for 214 degrees and go 82 kilometers. No, it was, see that star? Follow it. And when they came to the first obstacle in the road, I think God gave them choice as to which way to go. You see, there are some who I think see the Christian faith and the will of God as extremely narrow and almost like a tightrope. And here they are as Christian people saying, I don't want to miss the will of God, and I've got to make sure that I'm always stepping one foot in front of the other, because if I miss, I'm going to fall into some kind of abyss, and I'm going to miss the will of God entirely. I don't believe the will of God for you and for me is as narrow as we might think it is. I think there are choices that God allows us to make as we journey along the road. And there will be problems, issues that will face us, just as the wise men had to go through difficult territory. We will have many obstacles that will come our way. We'll have accidents, we'll have illness, we'll have deaths in the family. We'll have job opportunities that will come and job opportunities that will go. And at each time we hit one of those obstacles, we will pray, oh God, which way? And on many of them, I believe God is saying to us, just keep going forward. Because if you're going forward, you can go around this obstacle this way. You can go around this obstacle this way. You can go over it. You can go under it. But just keep going forward. And when we do that, then God will allow us to know that we're still on the right track. And even if we make a mistake from time to time and choose a wrong direction, God can still correct us and bring us back. Don't think that life is so narrow that we have to be fearful. God gives us the ability to keep moving forward. Well, the wise men came into the area, and since they were used to giving advice to kings and being the ones who would advise kings, they found the king and found Herod and said, so what do you think? Where is this new king that's going to be born? Interesting, all the different reactions that when someone announces that Christ is among us, 3 different reactions. The reaction of King Herod, he was fearful. Because he said, if there is a new king, everything in my life is going to change. And there is going to be nothing the same again. And I don't know if I can take that. I want to keep things the way they are. There was the reaction of the chief priests and scribes who said, oh yeah, we can tell you where he's going to be born, but it don't make no difference. Here, Bethlehem, that's where he's going to be born. Off you go. But there was no involvement on their part at all. And then there were the wise men who said, we've got to find this one. Because if we don't find him, nothing in our life is going to change. And we want to be able to find this one who is bringing life and hope. Herod, interesting character. Not really a nice man. But in the end, God was able to use even Herod to keep directing people on the right way, on the journey. That'll happen in our lives. Where somebody will come into our life that we know is just darn nasty and perhaps even evil. And God can even use nasty, evil people to be able to move us forward. When they get there, when they come to Christ, their eyes are opened. They see in this child something that they absolutely know is a miracle of God. They come not to get photographs, not to get autographs. They come in order that they can worship. And that's what God seeks, is that we will be able to come with an imperfect faith, not knowing all of the answers to all of the questions in life, but we are coming to the one who knows with our imperfect faith. Not to be able to tell him what to do, but to listen while he tells us what to do. For the wise men, it was a new journey that they were beginning, that was a journey to Christ. For us, it is a journey with Christ. So in this year that lies ahead, may we find for ourselves what it is that is our star by which God guides us. May he give us the courage and the faith to be able to follow it. Amen.